second book of hers that I'm reviewing, that I edited and I'm also reviewing. So it's a privilege again to be here to review this book. The book titled Music and Communication, The Musician's Companion, was recently written by Esther James. The book has 53 pages in all, excluding the 10 preliminary pages in Roman figures. The preliminary pages consist of the dedication, the acknowledgements, the foreword, the recommendation remarks, singing, which is not the correct pronunciation. The correct pronunciation is singing, just as you said. A round of applause for her. I know her as a musician, as a music specialist, not as a linguist, but she is depicting what is in what is in linguistic circles. So that's why I was delighted. Now, this broad heading, like I said, comprises the introduction, that's the general introduction in chapter 1. So, the introduction gives us a general overview of what communication entails and the two major focus of communication, which are both verbal and non-verbal. Verbal communication and non-verbal communication. It further explicates that verbal communication involves speaking and singing, while non-verbal represents all forms of gesture. In addition, an explanation of both speaking communication as well as singing communication is provided. Both of them are verbal forms of communication, whether it's speaking communication as I'm speaking now or singing communication. They are all categorized under the verbal form of communication. The emphasis here in this book is on singing communication, which strictly involves singing. This goes to show that singing is a form of communication. The author emphasizes the fact that all forms of music are for communication with the intent of passing across a specific message. Unfortunately, most musicians have the erroneous idea that music is basically for entertainment. Finally, the author points out that music can be both presented vocally and instrumentally. Vocal music being in form of solo, duet, trio, choir, etc., while all forms of instrumentations such as piano, guitar, and so etc. are instrumental forms of music. Her focus in this particular book is singing communication. The remaining part of section 1, which is chapter 1, discusses extensively this singing communication, and she tries to define what singing is, emphasizing the fact that it is using the voice as a musical instrument. Thereafter, she talks about the fact that singing can be done in any language, which is true, stating that the language of focus in this book is English. She stresses that musicians or choristers who sing in English must endeavor to improve their spoken English communication skills for better articulation, particularly as English is known as a global language. Let me remind everyone here that that current research shows that 2.5 billion people in the world speak and use English, and it is the most widely spoken language till date. So choosing English as her focus here is understandable. She then provides the factors associated with singing communication, namely melody, the language you use, passion, emotions, and gestures. All these factors, according to her, all work together for a common goal. And what is that common goal? Effective communication in singing. She then emphasizes the fact that singers tend to concentrate more on melody and pitches, voice texture, than the particular language in use. This trend to her hampers the effectiveness in communication to the extent that the listeners do not actually get the message being passed across. Just as some of the commentators earlier on said, usually you find people singing, whether duet, trio, or solo. They come out, and I have experienced that as a language expert, as a phonetician. I have experienced that when people sing, even in the church, I hardly get whatever they're singing. The words are not properly articulated. So I just strain my ears and merely enjoy the melody. But the purpose, in that stance, I want to say, when anyone is singing and the audience doesn't really grasp what you're talking about, there's what you call communication breakdown. The message is already lost. Heading in this section is titled The Awareness. The Awareness, that's the broad heading under this section. This section comprises 4 chapters. 4 chapters, chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5 altogether. All these chapters are to create awareness in respect of the challenges faced by non-speakers of English and their mode of pronunciation. For example, in chapter 2, the author discusses the pronunciation challenges of the non-native speakers of English. The author discusses the reason for these challenges. And which are the reasons? Difference in the dialectal features of our local languages and the spoken features in English. Of course, let me explain that. Nigerian languages have their own phonology, their phonetics, their sound patterns, as different from the sound patterns of English. The sound system. All of us here, we are all bilinguals. We already have our first language, which linguists refer to as L1, that's your language 1, otherwise known as the mother tongue and your first language. So the trend usually is for the mother tongue to become superimposed on your second language, and that is the problem we have. That is why even when people are talking, the influence from the mother tongue is on the second language, which is English. We are all second language users of English here. That's why we are all bilinguals. Even those who speak Pidgin, who do not speak the standard English, they are still bilinguals, because Pidgin is a language in its own right, and the first language is already local. So because of that influence from the mother tongue, as you will see in the succeeding chapters, that the reasons the author gave regarding the challenges faced by the non-speakers of English, non-native speakers. There's what you call near native competence in speaking English or any language. There is non-native speaking. We are non-native speakers of English. And if a native speaker comes here and speaks, you have to really, except for those of us who have studied phonetics and phonology, when anybody speaks, you can comprehend. But if somebody who is a native, purely native speaker of English comes here, it will take some time for us who are Nigerian speakers of English to comprehend certain sound features or qualities or words that are being pronounced. So those are the things the author tries to address here. Influence from the mother tongue. So that's the reason she mentioned the difference in the dialectal features of our local languages. And a few examples of these features are listed on page 9. A few of them will suffice in this, my presentation. And if you go to page 9 of that book, the word thanks. Because we do not have this sound, which is called, I have to be a little bit technical now, which is called the dental fricative. It is absent in Nigerian languages. We don't have it. And that is why we look for the closest substitute. And that's why instead of people to say thanks, they say thank you, not thank you, thank you. Because that dental sound, the dental fricative, is absent in our local languages. And when you try to speak phonetically, people will say, oh, she's speaking phonetic. Well, it's just like you want to speak French. I speak some French, and there are ways when a French speaker wants to speak English, I know that person is French. Why? Because of the sound patterns in French. When a German wants to speak French, I know because of the sound patterns in German. When a Yoruba man speaks English, I know that person is from that axis. When an Igbo man, Efik and all that, you know because of the influence. The accent is there. That is it. So it is, and let me tell you, even in our local languages, let me just chip in this. A while ago, I was in a conference, and somebody just came and said, they were calling names. A white man called a Yoruba name, which is Adekogbe, and he said, Adekogbe. Adekogbe. If you don't listen well, you won't even know whether it's Adekogbe is calling. Why? Because of the difference in the sound patterns. While English is a stressed language, all our local languages are tonal. We use tones, not stress. So that is one of the most difficult aspects because we tend to tonalize most of the names or words in English. And English is not a tonal language. That's the problem. So, for example, there are these two words, breathe and breath. People misuse them. She mentioned them as some of the examples. Breathe. It carries another type of sound that is, they will call it voiced. And breath carries another type of sound which is voiceless. They belong to the same category, but the one is voiced and the other one is voiceless. And that's it. Then somebody that came out talked, and I just brought out, there are ample examples on that page 9, but I just brought out a few to explain. Now, the last example